All right, welcome to Stampscapes live or on the replay, whatever you're watching. Thanks so much for checking out the video. I just came across these two books that I hadn't looked at in quite some time, but these are the types of books that I was looking at when I was designing a lot of my types of stamps out here that are either kind of featuring grassy areas or have those types of elements within a small area of the design, okay? So let's take a look at this cover right here. Do you see this? How kind of the tonal ranges of these figures look, okay? So a lot of times when people are thinking about grass, they're thinking about single blades of grass or something like that, but that's not really how they look if we're going to approach them in terms of, creating a design featuring that, okay? So they're much softer kind of little elements with just a little bit of variation within kind of the structure of that, whatever that grassy area is, okay? So let's just take a look at, some of these designs here. You can see where these types of forms are within my designs, okay? So these ones are called the sedge banks left and right. You can use them like that to connect up, or they can connect up this way, whatever way you want it to go, but it creates this shoreline, all right? But you can see, here's another sedge cluster like that, but you see these forms in here where there's just kind of this highlighting within the forms like that to differentiate the differences in space, near and far, by these little shadowy textures like that. But then there's these little scratchy lines like that, and that's what you get in these different designs like that. So you can see where this type of thing is coming from. This element right here might just represent kind of like the edge of one of these types of things like that. All right. And there's different types of grasses too, with different textures. So this one's a little bit rougher of a texture. There's so many different types of grasses out there. But I love the look of grasses. They're very textural, and I don't know. There's something that they're not really super easy in terms of the rendering of them to make them look really natural. But here's some of these grass textures right here underneath my trees. And here again, you find them right in here in these subtle little textural spaces like this, okay? So instead of having these trees just go down into nothing, I put this grassy area underneath them to create a transition zone. And it just makes it easier for us to stamp out and color when that type of element is already in there. We don't have to make up a bunch of things. Hello, Linda. Good to see you. Hope you had a great trip. Hello, Denise. All right, so I've done this before, and I think if you type in Stampscapes and grasses, I've done, I don't know, videos on them before. And then, of course, there's a lot of grasses in certain scenes, but just kind of isolating this type of thing into a separate videos, something I thought I would do here. Just kind of looking at some of these books I found kind of inspiring. But yeah, so as I look at these types of things like that, look at that area that's just kind of illuminated with light. So I like to give the impression that light is coming from within the scene and reflecting out towards us. And I don't know. I don't know if I have any here, but here's some grassy kind of foregrounds like this. But this kind of glowing area right here, this of course is dirt, but it gives, grasses are a really great kind of opportunity in our scenes to be reflective of that light, because they reflect a lot of light out, as opposed to like something like a darker dirt or surface or something of that sort. But I also like to play textures against one another. So I'm going to go into that a little bit here, and I'm going to show my kind of concept on the usage of these designs. Here's a pathway right here, flanked by different types of grasses. You can do different types of colors and ones that have a different kind of leaf structure. And it just kind of brings a scene to life. So things like this are something that I really love to kind of depict in a scene. It's hard to get kind of this real fluffy type of area like that, but we can kind of do more of these things these days with the use of things like paint pens. That's why I'm kind of always going into my grasses and adding things like wildflowers into it, because it gives it that other kind of textural element to kind of break up the monotony of an area that just has, you know, greens and things like that. So you break it up with things like color, you know, whites and purples against those greens. Here's some yellows in the backgrounds and reds like that, okay? I don't think I've done that in a scene, but I don't know. It could. But anyway, let's take a look at some of these images. And I have a couple different types of paper here, but you can use whatever. But the things that I'm going to be coloring, doing some examples of in terms of coloring and kind of finishing off some of these, the rendering of some of these forms in here. You can do it with any type of media. Okay, it's just kind of the concept of it. I might be using whatever, alcohol pens or colored pencils or dye-based inks or a combination of any of them or all of them. But the concept of the lighting of these grassy areas is going to be the same, or I should say, maybe more specifically, the retention of these kind of lighter areas and developing these shadows in here. So I thought I would do that here. I always love, you know, kind of playing around with these grassy textures. They're often kind of filler stamps, so it's not something that, you know, is like the focus of attention within a scene, but they're really important areas within a scene because they can really unify a scene through common texture, and they kind of establish the foundation of a scene. So, you know, it's like a secondary thought, but kind of really important as far as kind of the structure and, I don't know, maybe visual stability, I guess you can say, of a scene. All right, so let's just play around with these. I don't talk about like the specifics of these too much, but here's a little shore here. Let me see how did my black pad get so dry? Let me get some re-inker fluid. I have it around here somewhere. Unless I don't. Oh, wait, let me see. Okay, I'm gonna try here. Okay, so on some of these scenes, okay, so like a grassy area like this is predominantly green. There's some like blacks in here, okay? So I would recommend for us, we're not doing photographs of grass here, so I would recommend stamping any of these grass textures out in black as opposed to something like a green, okay? That's what sometimes people think about that. Now you can do that, but the problem is if you go lighter than whatever the darkest element you can get, unless you have like a super, super dark green, stamping these things in black like this allows us the greatest kind of versatility in how dark we can make these shadows in here without losing the image. So if you stamped it out in green or something like that, and then you colored it in with green, you would start to lose some of the imagery because it would be the same color as the impression. So if you start off darker with this and you color with lighter tones, or even like a dark green that's still pretty dark, but the black is going to still stand up against those darker tones in there in the shadow areas. So that's what I'd recommend generally. Okay, I have gone with multiple tones before, but just in general, it's a good way to go. All right, so let's fill this area out a little bit more. I won't do like, you know, complete scenes on these, but we'll just kind of fill them out. Okay, so this is my sedge filler right here, and it's often kind of the combining, unifying element for all of my different grasses. So these grasses usually end at some point in time in building them up, but then we have this top area usually. like right here, and I can fill this in using this right here. And then that just creates a, I don't know, like a nice horizon line. I'll show you this one more in depth here as I use it all the time. But here's some grasses like that. I mean, you can do, I don't know, let's just say, for example, you can place anything you want on top of that. A cabin or a barn or something of that sort. I've been using my flower fields a lot lately here, but I haven't explored completely my cozy cabins here. Let's do something with this cabin right here. This little barn would look really great there in the distance. This bed is really juicy. I thought it was kind of drier. I guess it's because this one's just all dots. It looked kind of drier when I was stamping it out. All right, let's see here. So this is just going to be, this is kind of a lakeside cabin, but if you stamp the grasses down here, it's just, you know, it's a cabin on a slope overlooking a meadow here. All right, so there's our cabin in the distance right here. You can see this kind of separation right here between this impression and this one, but you end up, we fill it in with color anyway, okay? So there's that, and then I like to bring in some extra texturing in here, just like, like a lot of the textures on this one right here, or this surrounding photo here. Let me see if I can see like an example right in here. Oh, I don't know if they have anything with a lot of depth in here. Here's like a little illustration right here, but these reeds right here against kind of those areas in the background like that could be like a ground cover type of grass. Or here's one right here. I don't know if you can see, these are like some taller reeds. I know you can't see it real well, but then here's some of these kind of more fluffy grasses in the background. But that's what this type of thing provides right here. I'll use this one later on. It's better if I kind of color this in before I stamp that out. Or I don't know, let me see. This is the semi-gloss paper. Let me just add it in right now so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so you get that kind of that depth of whatever grassy textures, because if if we were like worm's eye view, or, right next to that bunch of grass right there, chances are it would look like this right here. It's like something where you're really close to those reeds right there, or those blades of grass, okay? All right, so we'll go in, we'll just stamp out a few of these and we'll get into some coloring here really fast. So with anything, you want to really blend in your imagery and overlap, and that's especially true with grasses, so you don't have this kind of separation in between the images. Sedge cluster right here, okay. Now I just use the top of it right up there going next to that sedge bank, but so this right here, you just kind of overlap the previous impression. I'm going like a 1/4 inch or so. You can go more, you can go less, but it'll blend right in with each other like this. I can go down here now if I want to, a little bit lower, just to vary things a little bit. You could even have it back here in the distance, and it creates this kind of wetlands area or this kind of pond in between these grass textures like that. But I'll leave this open up top, so we can add in, I don't know, whatever extra things up there. But see, this kind of ends a little abruptly. So we need to create a little bit more distance up here, and that's where the sedge filler comes in. Let's have some fun here with the sedge filler. Okay, so I'll slope it like that a little bit. And again, it's all grasses, but see how that's going off in the distance like that? And see how I sloped it down like that? Now let's go in like this, and we'll have another kind of hill like that, and then I'll go like this right in here. And I'll show you how to color this when I get to that portion. Let's add some trees. and how I mentioned that there's some that's grass texture below at the base of those trees. Let's just go ahead and stamp this out, and you'll see how this tree just naturally blends in completely with those sedge cluster and sedge filler up there, okay? But let's take a little step further right here with the stamp. It's really soft masking on here again because we want everything to blend together, but to create a little bit of separation between this hill right here and this background hill. Now we can just do that with color too, but you can also really do it very quickly with some additional imagery. So here's this tree, and we'll put the tree behind that hill, kind of undermask a little bit, you know, so that you have a little bit of space, and that tree will go right next to that edge. If you go a little bit over the edge, it's fine. And you have this tree back there. Now here's this other slope of this grassy area, right? This is a way to really kind of maximize your stamps, and I'll just use a smaller portion of that tree. So I'm just going, you know, it could be a tree on the other side of the slope, or a younger tree, or a smaller tree. But it's just a way to kind of maximize the use of the stamps and to really kind of push them in terms of at whatever usage goes, and to create space, okay, within a grassy area. So I'm just using the tips of it out there in the distance like that. I mean, you can put another one in here if you want to, or wherever you want it to go. Let's break this up a little bit and go, you know, I kind of have like isolated impressions of it, but let's cluster these two together right here a little bit more, and I'll stamp this one right next to that one like that. So it's just kind of a field of grasses and some more trees at varying distances like that, okay? But we have all of these little areas in here that are, they're varied. They're not flat. They're rounded like that. So I'll show you how to render this and still, you know, to retain that space. Because what I'm getting at is if you just color this in with like a solid area of the same uniform green, it'll flatten this out a little bit. So we want to make use of all of these shadows in here and develop that more varied, rounded looking forms like these ones right here. Okay, so we'll do that on that type of space like that. So it's a little bit more delicate in here, but I'll show you a really easy approach to doing that type of thing. I'm looking at that tree right there that I just used, and the tree cluster should be a really good one to use with the cabin, lakeside cabin stamp right here, just to kind of fill this area out a little bit. Like this. Like that. Let's do something here. Let's have some fun. Okay, so this is the sedge filler. You can see how it's used right here in kind of the mid-ground and in the distant areas. Let's put a little hillside back in here, like a grassy hillside. So I'll go like this, stamp it right there, that little bit of a line, and then I'll take the tops of my trees like this, and let's put in, now I could use like some smaller trees, okay? And that would look, you know, a little bit better probably, but this is like a, you know, things that you can do. And, you know, if you have like one stamp out and it's like, okay, I don't want to look for my pine duo or something, you know, a really small one, then you just use the tree tops of a larger stamp. And look at that grassy slope right back there now, and it's the same trees as right here. I don't think it reads, you know, too much as, oh my god, there's the same tree used over and over again. You know what I mean? If people are looking at this, I don't know if they're going to be thinking that just the same as I don't think they're going to be thinking it on this, but you can see how these scenes just kind of merge together. Like even if this was like connected up like this can almost flow into this next scene right here, just naturally. And that's where grasses really come in handy. They're a great kind of blending mechanism Look at this scene right here. Well, they don't match up like that, but it's more like this, right? But you can do, I don't know, you can do as wide of a scene as you want with a couple stamps. It's just like, you know, the sedge filler. Well, this one here uses the sedge cluster, but look at that. One tree can fill in this whole area in here. So that's where the importance of, you know, potential importance of grasses come in. You can do a scene that doesn't have any grass, or it's like a tiny little bit that's really super insignificant, but, you know, it's the most kind of, I don't know, it's like, I wouldn't call it a boring stamp because I know it, you know, these things are used for, but you wouldn't think about something like this as being like a big scene builder and really significant, potentially significant type of stamp. Hello, Brait. How are you? Hello, Sharita. We're talking grass. Okay, I got an avalanche of stamps around me here. Let's see. All right, let's do a couple other things right here. I think you guys gonna get the you know, the gist of this blending thing right here. This is old hat for a lot of you, but let's see here. Here's an autumn bank right here. This is the right, and this has some grasses underneath here. Now, usually I'd use it on the right side of the scene, okay, but just to make a point here, well, let me see. Let's do this right up here. Let's stamp this kind of high up top here, like so. All right, this is on a piece of semi-gloss right here. And do you see, I purposely left this space right here just, you know, so I'd have to fill in here with some extra grasses. All right, so let's take and let's go with the, this is a little bit of a smaller sedge cluster right here. And you're overlapping right in there to carry that idea right down that way. And let's go on with the tree cluster right here. Glad it's coming in handy, Darlene. I really love, I love the look of grasses, and especially these days with the there's so many different paint pens out there. You know, so it's after I kind of blend it all together and do all this coloring. And then I, you know, have a really great time adding in like all kinds of little floral elements or something like that into the mix. Okay, let's see. A little sedge cluster right there. I just gave it a little bit of extra texture up here using, not the sedge cluster, but the sedge filler. Okay, now let's do this. Let's create, okay, so I have this little bank of grasses right here, right? So you can use all kinds of different grasses, for a foreground. So this could just be looking out at the lake like that. Our grasses could be kind of the foundation for the rest of everything that's built up on top of it. But let's use it for creating like a close bank to us. So we have this bank coming around like this, and I don't know if it goes out here, or this one goes out here, and it, you know, meets up around there. Or I don't know if this one's like coming around like this and it's like this. So it's like a little cove in here. I mean, you could make a cove too. You can use this like this and just stamp it like here, 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 and here too. I don't think, yeah, actually, maybe I'll do that. I was just going to go with like a foreground bank right down here and not have it connected, but let's connect this out like that. I don't think I've ever done that before. Let me see. These come in a couple different sizes. You can just use one or the other, but I will try this right here. Let me see how this goes here. I'm going to wipe off the bottom of this right here, as it's kind of like that water's edge type of thing. So I'll come like this, and then let me go over here a little bit more like that. Here, I'll come over like that. Okay, And then I'll add some extra grass right in here. Okay, so it makes this little cove. It's like where all the fish are. Everyone likes to go, you know, when they're out in a boat or doing some shoreline fishing. It's always in that like you know, that cove out in the corner or something like that. That you know, it's like I don't know if it's a secret spot. Everyone does it, but okay. So here's another grass right here. Let me just use this one just because I haven't used it yet. It could be these ones too. This one right here, it's a little bit of a closer grass cluster. You can see it's like this. It's like bigger. So it's like as if we were looking at like this small section of the grass right there. So being that this is kind of coming around this way, I'll go with a large one like this right here. Okay. Now see these little balls are like that, and that's what you get in, you know, it's kind of the idea of this type of thing right here, okay? Right in here. But I don't like that just as is most of the time. I mean, you could have it like that, but I cap it off again with the sedge filler like this, okay? And I think it looks a little bit more natural like that. It didn't look like, you know, it doesn't look great right now, but again, you mix your textures again. So let's go with this right here, and we'll go a little bit higher, you know, some additional grasses like this. I'll kind of frame things off a little bit right there like so. Have a little bit of this coming in from the edges like that. And you get this little cove right in there. They say they're biting on the spinner bait. I don't know. I don't fish. I don't know what I'm talking about. Worms. We used to go fishing though. Up in the Sierras. It was all like trout and farm salmon, but kind of the type of fishing that always kind of intrigued me more was, and we never did it, but like bass fishing and using lures and stuff like that. I didn't really like fishing with too much, like salmon eggs and cheese, they called it, and what else do we use? Worms, a little bit. All right, so anyways, there's a little bit of texturing in there like that, but you have these grass textures looping around like that, so a little bit of a different. Okay, now the grasses in these ones are of course much more prominent. This one right here, it's just a foundation for more of these trees in here. You know, the water's more of a subject matter, so the grasses in here kind of acting as more of like a framing device. All right. And here it's the foundation for our main kind of subject matter like that. Okay. But again, you know, when approaching this right here, I mean, you could certainly keep things really minimal and say, okay, what color, you know, I'm looking through my Prismacolor pencils or colored pencils or whatever. And a lot of people, or, you know, your Copic markers, and you might think, okay, what color is grass? You know, which one of these pens is like the closest thing to kind of my vision of being grass? And they're thinking about one color. It's like grass green or something like that. And like I said, you can certainly do that type of approach, but if you want to get a little bit of a richer type of modeling of form and color scheme, then what you want to do is you want to build up a few colors. No, you don't have to use like 20 or something like that, you know. 15 is going to be adequate. I'm just joking, you know, but like I would say 3, light, medium, and dark of a certain color, okay? With grasses, my secret thing, it's not secret because I mention this like every time, but I use browns in my grasses, okay? So let's see here. Let's one of these is, which one of these? Okay, this one's a glossy cardstock right here. These two are semi-gloss right here. Let's do, I don't know, let's do, should I do, I usually do multimedia, but let's just, for the sake of this video here, let's use, you know, some different methodology here. Okay, so colored pencil maybe on a couple of, or one of these pieces, the semi-gloss pieces, you know, so either one of these two. And then we'll go with some dye-based inks, and we'll use some alcohol pens on what? I don't know. I don't have so many here. I only have 3, but I know we'll go multimedia. Okay. All right. So anyways, we're going to be modeling forms here. Okay. So when people are coming over from certain types of coloring, types of strategies, okay, they're stamping out some kind of objects, and a lot of the objects out there in the stamping world are outlines, okay? So what you do is you stamp things out in like sections, okay? You color it in something akin to like a coloring book, you know, where you're doing different areas with a uniform value, okay? Now, a lot of times people will go in and they'll add a like a darker element or something like that, and then they're doing shading, or they're doing kind of some rendering where you're making a form look more three-dimensional. A lot of times people don't think about that though, but they really are doing that. I'm just doing it instead of around a really definitive shape, or, you know, geometric shape or space, like a stained glass window or something like that. I'm doing it kind of, you know, around less defined forms in here, but they are defined. You can see the lights and darks within these grassy structures like that, okay? But the thing is, you're not bound by that little area in there, okay? So let me show you what I'm talking about when we get to this right here. All right, so let's just, let's do some colored pencils on this one. I might be adding in some other tones because, I don't know, I just think it looks richer of a surface. So we have, I don't know, just kind of roughly light, medium, darker tones like this. I'm not sure what one goes, you know, what's darker between these two. One's a little bit brighter. But you just line them up from light to dark like that, okay? And then, now this isn't the ideal paper for colored pencils or anything like that, you know, because it's a fairly smooth paper. But it does take colored pencils reasonably well, okay? And I'm saying that because I might not be able to build up colors on this, like, too extreme, okay? But this is the lightest color here, or is it? I don't know, maybe this one's lighter. This one's warmer. They're about the same value. So I just kind of give a general kind of application of them, but I do leave a little bit of that lighter area showing like that on there, okay? But you just kind of, this is the lightest of the grains, but I'm also doing a very light application of it like that. It's like a, I don't know, like a 10% version of that darkest of color, okay? But that's just, it's just an easy way to start off like that, so you just don't go kind of like too dark and, you know, and have no place else to go with it. And then if you go too heavy on this type of paper too, you can't build up additional colors because, you know, it's just covered, it's too coated in wax, okay? So I just go with a really light coating of this. I'm going a little bit heavier and kind of right around the shoreline like that, where it's a little bit darker. In the shadows, you can see the shadows like right around in here, where this all is black right here. That's kind of where I'm, you know, applying this green for the most part, like to start off with. So you can see it's already kind of, you know, just with one color here. It's already getting kind of mottled a little bit. You can see this little darker area right here. Okay, so you just kind of add that right in there. And this makes it really easy to kind of approach. You do the same thing in the trees too, you know, if those are autumn trees or something like that, you know, you can go in there with like a yellow and then build it up with an orange and red or something like that. but we're kind of modeling forms in here and coloring too. When you just color in the whole thing uniformly, that's just coloring, okay? But if you're kind of modeling and lighting at the same time, it just means that you're doing less coloring. So don't let it confuse you either. People say, hey, I don't know where to color it, okay? I know I'm supposed to leave some areas light, you know. Well, I just leave the areas that are inherently lighter on the image or on the impressions lighter. You can see the darker areas on there, okay? But, I mean, if you mistake, oh my God, I lost my light, you know, right there or something like that, you know, I mean, that's fine. You know, just as long as there's a little bit of oscillation and then you get these forms look like they're, I mean, they're, you know, that tree could be casting a shadow on there, or if you, it's no trees out here kind of casted, but you know, there could be a cloud up here and it's just darker in a certain area. But just as long as you have certain areas of light like that, the forms look more modeled and three-dimensional. And here you have it right here. See this right here? So, you know, some, you know, darker areas right in here, and then there's lighter like that. So those areas right in here, these really dark areas, are provided on the stamp already, like right in here, okay? So you're just kind of, I don't know, reiterating that a little bit more with some additional colors, and it just looks, you know, so much richer that way, okay? So let's go on with this one right here. And you see, I'm just kind of, you know, I'm keeping in mind I might want to keep some of those areas still a little bit lighter like that. Yeah, let me keep referring to this. So, see these, like, these really lightest of areas in here? I don't know what color that is. It's like a pale yellow or something like that, okay? Like right around in here, that lightest of edge right there is kind of more green tone or something like that. But, you know, like right in there, it's like the lightest area, right? On the highlighted area. But now we're working with, you know, like a small space in here where, you know, this is like a half of an inch like that. So I might want to push contrast a little bit more by, you know, by just leaving it white instead of going to like a yellow or something like that. Okay. So again, I'm just kind of looking for areas that are lighter or areas that are darker, maybe more specifically. And I'm just kind of making it a little bit darker like that. But see this kind of, this lighting on there now? You can see it kind of like these little tufts of grass are kind of glowing now by coloring in the shadows. And it's just kind of a little bit right now. This is only like 2 colors, you know, where I haven't used it too much. But you can really see these grasses kind of illuminated and, you know, reflecting of light. You know, we have it right in here. It gets a little bit confusing right in here, so you just kind of make it up. You just kind of leave a little area light and kind of make the other area a little bit darker. And it doesn't matter. So this area's light. Here's a little strip of light right in there, you know. Now, when I'm teaching this in classes, everyone has no problem with the first like couple colors. They're keeping and retaining their light, and they get really comfortable with it, and it's like going really fast. So what I always told them was, okay, now you're on kind of a darker color inherently, right? So you just kind of put on the brakes a little bit more, and then you focus kind of the darker colors more in the shadow areas like this. What happened was, you know, people might be going, and it's like, okay, I totally get it now. It's like, see it developing like that. So they might kind of go like really fast with the darker tones. It's like, oh my God, I lost my light, you know? So in my classes, I always just say, okay, you know, with your darker tones, kind of, you know, change your pace a little bit, go at a little bit slower rate. And then, you know, everyone was fine. See, that the reason being is because if you're going with a really light touch like this, you know, it's a darker color to begin with. So that was like, you know, going at a certain rate with that color, but going, you know, light with this one. I mean, I could go really light with this one, but just in general, if I'm using the same pressure, it's darker than a lighter version of green. So You know, so you just kind of, what I do is I just kind of darken my darker areas a little bit, you know. I stay in those areas and I don't do as much coloring here. Here, I'm going to go a little bit darker down here to kind of blend these two. This was a separate image right here. So I'm going to go darker right here just to kind of blend it in a little bit more. We'll go along the shoreline like that. I'm getting little finger smudgies all over here because this ink is still a little bit wet, but we're not doing a smudge prevention video. It's more of a, like a grass rendering video. If I was doing this right here, this area in here is going to get all filled in with color anyway. And then if someone ever kind of doubts you did your scene, you can always say, hey, you know, my fingerprints are all over it. All right, so anyways, do you see that kind of grassy area like that? Okay, that's just, I don't know, I didn't even, here's my darker green. It's a little bit of a brighter green like this. You know, it's a really bright green. Here I'm going to be a little bit more selective with it. You know, it's a little bit, I don't know, not Christmassy green. What is it? Peacock green. A little bit of a blue green then, I guess. You see these kind of varied areas in here where it's a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, like that. I'm digging these colored pencils right here. I don't do too many scenes where it's just colored pencil. But I don't know, whenever I do, it's like, I need to just use some colored pencils sometime. Here's black right here. I'm going to hit this in the shadows, okay? Now, with the black, I'm just kind of staying in the darkest of areas like this, and just to kind of really give those lighter areas a little bit more of a punch. And you say, wait a minute, what do you mean? You're working the shadows. How is it giving the lighter area punch? Well, when you add some darker tones next to something that's lighter, the lighter things, objects or areas in a scene look lighter by contrast. So you go a little bit darker here, and that area up top looks that much lighter, again, by contrast. You want to give a little shadows underneath your trees. You can do that too. It looks strange in here without, you know, without any coloring on my trees right there. But here's this kind of grassy area right in here, and that's just using some colored pencils. Okay. Now I like a little texture. Let's since we're working on this one right here, let me just add this texture in right now. Kentucky bluegrass. There we go. I do use blues in my grasses all the time, especially if I'm doing some blue in the sky and blue in the water and something like this. I would color it blue, but I would also bring those blues in there and put the green right over the top of it, because blue is a component of green, so it gives continuity between all these different areas in here. Okay. All right, so a little bit of texturing in here. Let me show you this right here. I mean, this looks okay to me, just as is, but I'll show you why I add in a lot of little sparkly elements, okay? So this looks kind of cool, but this is like a really gigantic photograph, okay, where, you know, the camera is picking up all these little details in here and these little blades coming out here in the darker areas. You can see those blades against, you know, those darker areas right in there, okay? But we're dealing with, okay, so I'm dealing with this type of formation here, and I'm doing it in rubber stamping in like a half-inch area like that, okay? So it's hard to get, you know, we're not going to get those types of details in there, you know what I mean? Neither would we want to have to go through that type of process, but so something like this, you know, over the tops of these things, you know, here's some grass, you know, some other types of plants growing out of the grasses. Here's some lavender in here. But these types of things like this, over this kind of grassy area like that, it really just makes them kind of come alive. And again, it kind of creates a little bit more of a foundation. Like, now I know these are different types of flowers down here, but look at this visual right here, okay? And if you remove that, I mean, it makes for kind of a nice looking photograph or something like that, but there's definitely something missing in terms of like a, kind of textural and shape richness, and you put that in there, and that really, really adds to this whole composition right here. And that's what we can do these days with, there's so many different types of gel pens or colored pens, things like that. I'll just add in some little bit of highlights. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on this one here, but if I add in some of these, I'll try to add some of it in some darker areas so you can possibly see it on camera right here. But these little elements like this, you can do all kinds of different colors too. But this adds that kind of sparkly, I don't know, illuminated touch into the mix. For variation, it's contrast, it's something light in there against something darker. Now I'm going a little bit extreme with this because just so you can see it here. And I know those little white dots are going to kind of, when they dry, they kind of get a lot darker and kind of blend in with that background right there. But just from a textural standpoint, having those little elements like that gives us something crisp into, something that's otherwise rather soft like that. Now, again, this whole rest of the scene is not rendered, and I don't have like little subject matter in here, but that's that little kind of, foundation for our entire kind of structure like that. You have those grasses coming around in that. It's like we're in a pond or a lake right here, and here's this little cove right in here. So it's like the entire foundation, okay, for what people are going to be looking at more. So if I do some autumn colors in these trees up here, no one's going to be looking at these grasses at all, but it provides a nice stable foundation for our subject matter up there, okay? All right, kind of, this grassy area right here kind of sets the visual movement of a scene too. Someone's going to come in here and it takes them around like that, in terms of the visual path. All right, so on this one right here, let's do those same types of modeling exercises on here. You can't do colored pencils on glossy cardstock. But again, it's the same concept right here in terms of the approach of how you can color this, okay, to get, kind of a richer surface in there. All right, so, on this one right here, we used some different values of green in here. Oh, so on this one right here too, okay, I mentioned, but I didn't do it here, but sometimes, now I like this right here without this, but I often use brown in my grassy areas almost like all the time. So sometimes if you just use greens like that, it kind of gives it a little bit of a an electric kind of green feel to it. Which maybe I want if I'm doing stamping Ireland, okay. But I just put this little bit of brown in here, so it just kind of, it warms up the green a little bit and makes it a little bit more earthy looking, okay, to blend it, in there. I'll show you it a little bit more on here, okay. So same type of thing. Let's just grab, a few different types of greens, okay. So these are some green tones in colored pencils. I have more greens than this, but let's just start off with something like this right here. This one is looking really, really bright. I don't know if I'll use too much of that, but let's do this right here. Okay, so on this one right here, there's like a couple layers of trees in here. I don't know if you can see it in here if you just joined in, but there's a little bit of a slope right here, and there's like 3 slopes in here. There's this one right here, this one right here, and then that back one in there, okay? But we need to model all this a little bit more. So did I say hello to Megan? Hello, Megan. Let's see. Jeannie's watching at work secretly. And we need to thank her for joining in, because she has mentioned that if she ever gets caught, you know, she can get fired. So that's how valuable these live streams are here. Yeah, we'll finish off this that scene in there with something, huh, Horsey Girl? This one right here, as I was doing this one, I was thinking about that little dock right there and having that pier in there. But I wanted to do all this grass around in that, so I didn't do that. Okay, so we're going to start off with a light tone, and we'll work incrementally a little bit darker. And with the lightest tone, I'll start off with a really light version of it by just kind of inking up, wiping off a little bit like that. Remember, this was glossy cardstock here, okay? But let's add in some tones in here. My ink pad was really wet and it's smearing all this in here, okay? I'm gonna do that though. I'm just gonna keep working it. I'll do it more of a tapping motion. How's that instead? All right. Yeah, my tapping motion, I can't get quite as light as I usually do, but we'll just, we'll go with it here. This is like finger painting in a way. Okay, now remember how I modeled these in here with the colored pencils by leaving some areas light on the tops of this little, what do you call them, tufts or something like that. That's the same thing that I'll be doing right in here. Maybe I think I'll come in here with a little bit of alcohol ink too, okay? Just because my imagery in here is a little bit wet and the alcohol ink shouldn't kind of, you know, smear it too much. Okay, I want to create a little bit of, I'm doing two things here. I'm kind of creating a little bit of separation between these different slopes in here too, okay? Putting a little bit of a shadow underneath some of these trees. For a light green, that sure looks dark. But again, this is kind of blending in with some of the, yeah, it's picking up some of the black ink on here. My black pad was really super juicy. I thought it was a little bit drier than it was, but it's not. I thought I recently re-inked that, but, you know. So when I was doing those, I don't know, something. Stamp sketches? I forgot what I was doing the other day. Okay, I'm getting smudgy little fingerprints all up in the sky here too, but... Okay, so the modeling of form in here, okay? So we have that ink like that. Now let's move into... This is a really, really super bright green right here. Boy, that's looking all muddy in here and muddled. But that's the way it always looks on my pieces when I'm doing grasses, because I am using a lot of tones like that. Maybe not so much with that colored pencils, because that, you know, you're putting it in a really specific area, but on something like this, we do get a little bit muddled looking, but I do want this variation in here, okay? So it's important to, as I go through here, to retain at least some areas of light. We might lose some of it. It's like, oh my God, I went over it and I lost it. I mean, it happens to me too. But again, I'll show you how you get that variation in there. So see like that? So again, we're going for this type of look, you know, right in here. It's kind of like happening in here a little bit. I'll try to get a little bit more of a narrow application like that. I just kind of pinch this, you know, a little bit more narrow like that. People hate it when I use these paper towels like that. They're thinking, hey, Kevin, I didn't buy that whole set of blending brushes to go to the kitchen and get, you know, a piece of bounty. Use whatever you want, you know. Whatever feels good for you in your hand. Now, we used to use stylus tools, and that was my favorite applicator, but kind of paper towels are like my second favorite applicator. It's like everyone around the world has them. They don't have to go out and get some kind of specialized tool for that. All right, so see this right in here? We got that little bit of variation, okay? There's less control. You're kind of filling in a little bit more, you know, with a wadded up paper towel than you are kind of, you know, probably with a sharp, colored pencil. But like, again, don't worry about that. Okay, so this is jungle green right here. I don't know if I need to go into the jungle green because that first green that I use, whatever, celery, combined with black ink in there, that kind of gave me my, you know, this jungle green look. It's a little bit more of an aged, kind of mellow green, like that. Okay. And then we'll come in with a little bit of a darker green. This is a pine green. You can use more like a just, there's colors that are just called green. And it's usually kind of that Christmassy green. See, I'm kind of focusing it in the shadows a little bit more. We'll blend it around a little bit. These trees in here could be casting a shadow like this. So you just go in there like so. And again, I'm just kind of following my lead of what I retained in terms of the lightness, just even with that first color that was laid down in there, okay? All right, so this is just all greens. I'll come in with that brown on this one. All right. Now I would be coloring in all these other areas. I'd have some blues going like that. I usually wouldn't just develop one area of the scene, you know, that has a specific color scheme, just without anything else. But just for the sake of this video, you know, I want to show you, you know, mostly focus in on the grasses, so this video doesn't take forever. Okay, so we have a couple different brown tones right here, okay? So you can see what those tones look like just as is, okay? Just with green tones. But this is where you get a little bit more of like a mellow kind of earthy look. So any type of warm beige tone. This one's really almost a little bit too dark like this. Maybe I'll use maybe some Copics on this, or not Copics, but just alcohol pens, okay? So let's go with this brown. I really do like this brown, but I usually like go with a little bit of a lighter version, like a beige. The Distress Ink tones have a really great choice. But do you see the difference between that and like over here? Okay, that area in the shadows like that. What this is kind of doing too, this brown is like a version of orange, right? You know, with some other tones kind of mixed into it. So you're kind of expanding on the tonal range of these grasses right here. It glows a little bit more like that. Just with a little bit of a different kind of hue that's been introduced, instead of just going all greens like that. And I really like, I don't know, I think it looks more, I don't know, kind of more realistic. And kind of mellow. Sometimes when I do a lot of green tones and I'm really building up, it really starts to vibrate a little bit, just in terms of the intensity, okay? But then I add this in, and I kind of like all's well, you know, with things. Okay, that was a brown, kind of a medium brown. Let's go to a darker brown right here. I don't know, maybe it changes it to more of like a, you know, instead of springtime's, you know, summer or fall. Like that. I'm kind of getting, I'm losing some of the greenish tinges right here. So it's in the mix though, those brown tones. Let me use this one right here. It's a bottle green. It's a little bit of a darker, brighter green. Ooh, it's really bright. I'll just kind of apply a nice thin coat like that. And reintroduce a little bit more of that green. You're not really covering, but you're kind of glazing the surface with all these different tones like this. I'm leaving that area in there kind of specifically a little bit lighter because I'll be able to separate these different little slopes on this grassy area with some white when I get to it. So I like doing that with a little bit more texture. All right, now I want to go a little bit brighter in here too. Let me just go with my pens here. Let me grab a couple of these alcohol markers like this. You can go in with, some more dye-based things, but sometimes it's just easier to do it with the pens here. Like if I want to get, in some of these little areas in here around these tufts where this isn't really doing the trick, but this little fine tip pen can do it better, then, do your fine tuning, shading with this. I'll finish these scenes off in another video, by the way. I'll tone in the rest of these areas in here in sky. In this area here with all my little fingerprints, I'll add that cloud, alto cumulus, the mackerel sky. It's a real textured sky, and it'll come, completely obscure, some of my, all of my little smudgies. Okay, now this is a really bright green in here. See that? It's kind of like warming things up and starting to glow a little bit more. Then I'm kind of scumbling again. Scumbling is just kind of where you're going like this. And I'm kind of putting it in some of these darker, shadowy areas within the design, which are like right in here. And that's why we stamped it out in black, so we can still see them after we've applied all of these other, various tones of green right over the top of it. The black initial impression still stands out really well against the those tones in there. All right, so Sharita wanted a little bit of that bluegrass here. Let me add some of this right here, or yeah, I think I have a couple of these alcohol pens here. Let me see. I don't know this is what bluegrass looks like, but here, let me see. A lot of those little bluish tinge like this. This is like too light. It's too dry. Maybe this one's like too. This one's a little bit dry too. Yeah, there you go. You can see it a little bit. I'm putting it over the grass, the green, so it doesn't really show up too much. You see it, it looks like a little pond back there. All right, so again, we'll add on some other things into this, but let's add in some extra reeds in the foreground, like this. It's looking a little, now see, this gets all muddled in here, okay? But that's what happens with my grasses. Again, maybe not with the colored pencil, but when I'm doing all these types of layers in here, I get this richness in there in tone, but from a textural standpoint, it all gets a little bit muddled because there's so many colors that have been laid in there. And again, I'll add like water down here, some browns for that little dirt shoreline or something like that. But let's do this right here. We can add some sharpness right here in the foreground like this, okay? But these areas right in here are, they're definitely muddled, okay? But that's how they always look for me. And that's why I go into it with things like the paint pens. But I also like adding some additional textures in there. So for me, it could be anything. It could be the smaller version of these reeds, and you have these things coming out of the grasses. Again, like this kind of layered type of garden, planted garden. They play contrast against one another. I don't know if I could see. But see this right in here. I mean, this isn't exactly, it's not like those green grasses, but you have these things kind of going up. So they're playing like height and color against one another, okay? Let's see, right in here, here's these grasses in here. This looks like an agave plant or something like that, but you have these sharper things kind of amidst, you know, those softer areas. In here, you have this big, huge, sedgy type of thing in the background right there, but they've planted these trees in there and other types of plants in the background. Sorry, it's all out of focus. All right, so you just kind of, you play that. You play textures against one another. You can see it out in nature too, but if someone's like planting something like that in there, you know, here's these little yellow. I'll try some yellow in this one. But, okay, what I like to do now is, because this kind of gets muddled like that, any type of sharper thing in there is fine. I grabbed this stamp. I haven't used this for a while, but this is always one of my favorite ones to use. This is just called Bush, okay? And it looks like that right there. All right, it's just something nice and kind of craggy. And I just kind of place this in here into the mix like this. So it's something that's kind of a little bit darker and sharp within an area that's kind of just soft and kind of muddled. So it's this crisp little element. It's a dark element, but we'll also add in some lighter elements into the mix too, okay? So you see that right in there? So we get these little shapes like that in there, and in the background like that, okay? And then we can go into there and let's do, you know, something like this one right here, okay, with these little flowers kind of within that grassy little area. These right here would be really cool too. I don't know how he would do that though. You could. I mean, it's like in all of these right here, these little seed, you know, clusters at the top, you know, these grasses, seeding grasses like that. You'd probably have to take like something like this and, you know, do these little wisps like this, like at different angles. I've never done it before. Anything kind of like that, I don't know, whatever, involved of a mark, or I don't know, as far as like a gestural mark. Okay, so anyways, let's go in here like this and add these little elements in here. Now I'm adding these yellow ones, so it looks like flowers, of course. If you do it in white, it, you know, I guess depending on how you kind of add them in, it could look like highlights or glistening dew in the, you know, the sunlight or something like that. If you do it in color, of course, you know, it represents flowers probably. And the way that I do little flowers is I kind of cluster them like this a little bit more than kind of just evenly patterned like that. But look at that. Isn't that coming alive like quite a bit? And it's because, now before, you know, before it was all kind of muddled in there, but now you have this crisp element in here, so you've introduced back into your grassy areas, you know, a little bit of a, or a lot of a, you know, the textural range back into it. When we first stamped everything out, everything was nice and crisp, all of our impressions. Then we color over it and it kind of got a little bit, you know, muddled and less defined. And now you have this, you know, like this and that bush in there. It's like a crisply defined little area. And this is, you know, this whole kind of meadow starts to kind of come to life. And this is like that sharp little texturing in there. I don't know, it's like a spring kind of statement, I guess. And then, all right, you know, I need some blue up in my sky or something like that, but you come into it again. And this is really fun to add in here. It's a little bit early to do this, like I said, but, you know, because I haven't colored in anything else in here, but these little areas right in here in terms of layered grassy hills, okay? I'm going to come into it with some white pigment ink. And let's add a little bit more definition between these hills. I'll mask off. Instead of going with color, you're going with white, like this. Now this isn't how to do grasses, but it's like if you want to create, you know, kind of some grassy hills or kind of a deeper kind of a space, you know, where, you know, it's focused around grasses like that. So here's this little cloud like that, and I'll mask off this slope right here now. See how I left a little bit of light up there? Like that. Or if you didn't leave any light at all, it's like, oh my god, I forgot I didn't leave the light. Well, then just, you know, just add it in with the white and it'll get lighter. Okay, go like this. I can push that little tree in the distance there too by adding a little bit of that. But see, that's kind of like, you know, this little mist in here like that is really fun to add into the mix. Let's do this right here. I'm going to put some in front of that tree right there. So this tree is like close, and I'll put this tree a little bit back a little bit farther. Not too far, but see, I'll just kind of lighten it up like that. Like that, and then this down here, you can have a little bit of a mist coming off of the water. Again, I haven't colored the water, but you know, this video is not about water. So anyways, so see this right here? We're getting this kind of real nice misty kind of you know, I find it to be a kind of a real lively, whatever grassy area. There's a lot of variation in it. Atmosphere. You have your softness, sharp elements in there, a lot of rich tones, and it's just really, you know, with this layer of mist in here, you're saying there's a lot of moisture in the air. So, you know, with water, there's life. So we got something like that in there. And that's how you get, you know, we can get these types of, you know, varied looks like this, okay? This is a more distant version of it, and I put a lot more flowers in there, but there's these little elements like that, okay? So, you know, I mean, like I said, this is the same concept in here, okay? But the important things are just, you know, I mean, I couldn't control it completely in here, but you're just, when you're coloring it in, you know, your grassy areas in, and you don't have to leave a huge amount of it. There's not like any set amount, like you got to leave like 20% light. You know what I mean? It's not like that. I mean, you could have like a couple little areas in here, but these little tufts in here like that really make things look really three-dimensional like that. So you get, you know, kind of like lighter around right here, and then it gets darker right here, and then you go light and dark like that, okay? And that's what I've done throughout here. Like, it's right on the design right here. So we have light, dark, light, dark, you know, light, dark, like that. So you're just retaining a little bit of light in here. Let's say you don't leave it white, but, you know, oh my God, I colored it with that first color of green. Well, that's fine. But maybe just when you get into your darker greens, these don't have to be green either. You know, it could be like California where it's all like brown. But you hit your darker colors kind of in these areas right in here, okay? And right up here is just, you know, a couple little areas of light. And a lot of this kind of got a little bit kind of muddled across there. But again, if you're going with those, you know, heavy saturations of ink, but look how rich this looks now as a result of, what was it? I don't know, there's like 4 different tones of green in here, but you know, some of these were used really, really minimally. Okay, just, I hit it a couple areas in the shadows a little bit. This one right here too had, you know, like these two like brighter greens. Now I can add it down here too. Like, okay, now this looks really anemic to me, to tell you the truth, after doing this one. I'll go back into this one and add some warmer greens into it, with the colored pencils and some brighter applications. Like this. Okay, now watch this. See, but I'm hitting this in kind of that darker area like that. Because remember, I just colored it kind of minimally a little bit, just a little bit of an application. But see, we can go brighter in here like that. That looks better now, doesn't it? So, we can do that all around in here too. But I still retain a little bit of that lighter area up top. So we go from light to dark right in that little cluster, just like on all of these clusters have it. They're a little bit lighter up top. See, it's like a different color green. This is like a yellow green. This is like a neutral, and then this is like a darker green down here, which is how things are, all around us. The darker areas on something are just darker versions of that color. So you see these stamp pads like this. Okay, so that looks lighter right here, but that's like a darker version of that red in there. I don't know, or you can just see different versions of that, that red in there. I have too much light in my studio here. It's not like super defined like that. But again, you just kind of play around with that and retain those lighter areas, and you'll get some nice kind of undulating grasses that look really three-dimensional, and it could be a really kind of lively part of your scene. Now this one right here, this for me, those little dots in there kind of saved me, okay? So I'd really recommend the use of, even if you have just like a couple different like gel pens or paint pens, and I used just white, for years because they didn't have a lot of different colors out there. That will do it, you know what I mean? So I go muddled a lot on my pieces because I wouldn't call it over coloring because I just see it as part of the process. But a lot of I know just if people do this like for the first time, it's like, oh my God, my scene got this, like it got muddy. You know what I mean? And I definitely know where they're coming from because my pieces get muddy all the time. So you add your sharpness right back into it. And you take that kind of muddled area that might be rich in tone, but it's not really rich in terms of textural range. Everything gets a little bit soft. So you add these little sharper things back into it. It doesn't have to be specifically that. It could be like some reeds, or you can put like a person in there. It could be a deer in that background, but something sharp into it, and then add those little, little sparkly little highlights in there. It could be flowers. And this scene right here with all that bright, warm tones like that, you could do various colors of things like wildflowers. In here, I think, I'll finish this one off at a later time, but something like this. I don't know if it would be right next to a pond, but I've seen those forests with a forest floor just filled with bluebells, and that looks really cool. So, having like some purples in here would be really, really fun, right on the tops of those greens like that. And things like violets are really good. They go really well. I wouldn't do it with the paint pen. I'm just putting that purple right next to there like that. That's why they had it on that cover right there. Now I'm thinking about it, right? So you can see that that lavender right there. And I think that's a lavender. It looks like a French lavender. Or is it just, I don't know, whatever. But look at that purple right next to it, So it just really harmonizes with things like that. But you can almost do any color in greens like this in these grasses. And the grasses, I can't think of any color that you can't use with these grassy meadows like that. And it really harmonizes really well with the pieces. Maybe it wouldn't be so green in there, in fall or something like that, but you could have some fall tones in there with, some of those fallen leaves right on the grasses in there. So you put those paint pen dots up there, and then you put some down in those, on those grassy tufts, or you can have it kind of floating around right in here. Maybe I'll do this one in a fall color scheme, because I really like using those little dried modelers leaves. And that seems like it'd be a perfect little spot to glue some of those, three-dimensional modelers leaves right in here. And we'll put who said that we need a boat in there? Yeah, Horsey Girl, yeah, like a small boat or something like that. Or I have this new kind of swimmer girl. Maybe she would be like really perfect for right here. It's always been like people like fishing in the past, but I have that new swimmer in there too. Or this could be like a foundation scene. I can color this in a little bit, and then I can put on a piece of vellum. This is getting into a whole separate thing, but I could put a couple tree trunks on a piece of vellum with that hammock girl right here, because I don't have anything in right here. And then what you do is you adhere the vellum right over the top of this right here, so it'll look three-dimensional like that. I need to do some vellum pieces. I haven't been doing it lately because you can't really do it in live stream. More of the things that I've been doing are kind of live streams. And at some point in time during a vellum process, I need to go outside and, lay down some spray adhesive on the vellum. Because you don't spray that type of thing indoors. You'll have glue on everything. All right, so anyways, I'm not doing this one right here, but you get the idea. So this one right here was all colored pencils, and you can use, the brighter tones, the colored pencils are really great. They give a really soft look, but if you want kind of a brighter, look to it, you can combine media. You can do multimedia. So like right in here, I'm just kind of laying down some of the alcohol ink, like a bright green right in here in those areas. But again, you just kind of stay with the same concept of some light modeling and retention like that. See that right in there? See how much brighter it got just with some, this isn't even a really bright tone of green, but it just kind of models it a little bit more or brightens it up so you can play around with multimedia and layer accordingly. And just remember that if it ever gets kind of muddled and you lost your definition, you just bring it back with your gel pens. And, I like it with the that cloudy mist in there with the, the white pigment ink. But even if it was just your gel or paint pens alone, that will really do wonders for pieces, especially if you're doing a lot of layering in any areas of your pieces. And it's usually with me, it's grasses, because I don't have a lot of variation like something like water like that. That's kind of a flat surface. I'll put like streaks across there. But in something like this, where it's like undulating, kind of grassy forms in a very small space, those are the areas that tend to get a little bit muddled, when I'm going for this, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, and dark light like that, So again, all you do is you hit it with those little sharp little elements like that and expand on your textural range with some other elements right at the end. And you can even include your, your fingerprints into the, the textural strategy. I'm joking, I should, when I'm handling these things, I should be, have a, paper towel or something like that down so I'm not getting my, like smudgy fingerprints all over everything. I like this composition right here a lot. This would be a perfect one, just with a big, like a meadow full of like spring blooms in here right in front of that cabin. So, yeah. Yeah, that sedge bank works pretty good with that cabin in the background. I'll have to remember that. All right, folks. So grasses, drop me a note if you have any questions on that, Get crazy with your greens. Just what you do is you just grab a range of greens of whatever ones you're going with and just kind of line them up in what you think is going from, light to dark like that, and start off with your lighter ones and just work through the value scheme into the darker tones. The lighter tones get a little bit more coverage and the darker ones are kind of more, whatever, relegated to, the darkest of areas within those objects or spaces, okay? Just in general, all right? But, don't get too caught up, don't get too, like I said, don't get too caught up in it. Like, this one's, I started laying down some colors, and at some point in time, it's like, okay, we're just laying it in there, and that part remained light, you know what I mean? It wasn't like really super strategic, so you're not doing like every little undulated form in there, you know what I mean? It would be too tedious. But some of these real major ones, like here in the foreground, you can have defined like that, and that would be enough, you know what I mean, to create a nice, whatever change of forms, grassy statement in there. And I go back and I add tones in there again later on. I adjust, I look at it overall, and it's like, okay, hey, over here it could have used a little bit more tone than just add it in. But, if you're working on the semi-gloss cardstocks, you can do it with colored pencils. You can do it with the markers. I was using alcohol markers. You can use dye-based markers too, whatever. Bring it all into it. Someone posted some scene somewhere, and on Facebook, I don't remember which group it was in, but they had the question, does anyone still use, God, what was it called? It was called, now I want to say Flower Soft, but is that the one? They used all green, but it was in like a tree. But I've seen things like textural things like that, Flower Soft, used in grasses before too. And I thought that looked really cool. So if I did that, I would do it on top of all these other tones. I don't think I would just go with the Flower Soft. I would add in some tones like that. But if you want to really go three-dimensional, then that kind of grassy type of thing might be kind of cool. Which reminds me, not to change subject here, but it's kind of similar. But oh my gosh, I don't even know where it went. I got that little jar of that type of, I got it around here somewhere. It's that little thing that people use on like model railroads, and they sprinkle that grassy kind of, it's like powder almost. It's like this little flake. I don't know where it is, but I got a little jar of that I want to use in like this area now that I think about it. So I want to build up my grasses, you know what I mean? And get in some kind of three-dimensional elements in there like that. Hello, Military Mom. Janice, thank you for joining in. Happy grasses to everyone. Grass Day. Oops, I just I touched the wrong thing here. Let me see. Oh, is that right? Oops. Okay, I get confused on the software. Thanks, everyone. Happy grass. Happy National Grass Day. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you on the next live.